Marcus checks his savings account for the third time this week. $47,000 sitting there. 18 months of discipline. No daily coffee. Meal prep Sundays. The 50-30-20 budget taped to his fridge. He's done everything the financial gurus told him to do. He's saved his emergency fund, maxed his 401k match, even bought 2 books on wealth building that are currently holding up his laptop on a makeshift standing desk. Marcus feels responsible. He feels smart. Here's what Marcus doesn't know. His college roommate, Devon, the guy who barely graduated, who never read a finance book in his life, just closed on his 3rd rental property. Devon doesn't have a budget spreadsheet. He has $8,000 in his savings account, less than a fifth of what Marcus has. And his net worth just crossed $340,000 while Marcus is sitting at $51,000. Same starting point, same age, same city. One of them followed all the advice that gets shouted from the rooftops. The other somehow learned the rules that rich people never actually say out loud. And that gap is not about to close. It's about to become a canyon. Because Marcus is playing checkers with a chess manual, and nobody's told him the pieces move differently than the book says. My name is Anch, and Fininvest logic exists for one reason: to decode the actual patterns wealthy people follow, not the sanitized advice they give at dinner parties. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still losing ground, hit subscribe because today we're exposing the silent rules. The ones that separate people who sound smart about money from people who actually accumulate it. And I'm going to tell you things that will make the conventional financial advice crowd very uncomfortable, which is how you know we're getting somewhere. Quick thing before the comment section explodes. I am not here to tell you that saving money is bad or that budgets are stupid. Basic financial hygiene matters. You can't build wealth while hemorrhaging money on things that don't matter. None of that is in question. And I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. It's pattern recognition from someone who's spent years studying what wealthy people actually do versus what they tell other people to do. Because here's the thing: most personal finance content is designed to make you forget. The advice rich people give publicly is often the exact opposite of what made them rich privately. It's not that they're lying. It's that they've climbed the ladder and genuinely forgotten which rungs actually mattered. They remember the story they tell themselves, not the mechanics that actually worked. Keep that in your back pocket for the next 20 minutes because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. So let's talk about what actually separates the Devons from the Marcuses. Because the gap isn't discipline. It isn't education. It's something much more specific. Silent rule number 1. Wealthy people optimize for money velocity, not money safety. Let me show you what that actually means with numbers because this is where it gets interesting. Marcus has $47,000 in a high-yield savings account earning, let's be generous, 4.5% annually. After a year, that's $2,115 in interest. Before taxes. After taxes, in his bracket, he's taking home about $1,480. He feels responsible. Devon took $45,000 and put it down on a $225,000 rental property at the beginning of the same year. The mortgage, insurance, and maintenance cost him $1,650 a month. He rents it for $2,100. That's $450 a month positive cash flow, $5,400 a year. But that's not the whole picture. That property appreciated 4% in his market. That's $9,000 in appreciation. On a $45,000 investment, Devon made $14,400 in year 1. Marcus made $1,480. But here's where it gets absurd. Devon's tenant paid down $3,200 of his mortgage principal that year. So Devon's actual return, $5,400 cash flow, plus $9,000 appreciation, plus $3,200 mortgage paydown equals $17,600 on a $45,000 investment. That's a 39% return, while Marcus got 3.1%. And Devon's money didn't sit still. It moved. It worked. It had velocity. That's not luck. That's a completely different operating system. Silent rule number 2. Rich people use debt as a tool. Poor people fear it. Middle-class people use it accidentally and badly. Let's get specific because this might be the most misunderstood wealth principle in existence. There's a personal finance guru, you know, the one who screams about how all debt is bad. Cut up your credit cards, live on rice and beans. And for someone drowning in 23% APR credit card debt from buying things that don't produce income, that's probably correct advice. But here's what that same guru won't tell you. The wealthy people in his audience aren't following that advice. They're nodding politely and doing the exact opposite with surgical precision. Let me give you a real pattern. I know a commercial real estate investor, we'll call her Sarah. She bought a small office building for $1.2 million. She put down $240,000, 20%, and financed the rest at 5.8%. That building generates $110,000 a year in net operating income. Her mortgage payment is $71,000 annually. She's clearing $39,000 a year in cash flow on a $240,000 investment. That's a 16.25% cash-on-cash return. But here's the silent part. 3 years later, that building is worth $1.5 million. She refinanced, pulled out $180,000 tax-free, and used it as a down payment on a second building. Her original $240,000 is now controlling $2.7 million in assets. Zero additional capital. All leverage. Meanwhile, Marcus just read that debt is bad and felt good about having none. Different rule book. Different game entirely. Silent rule number 3. Wealthy people structure their income to be taxed differently. And this is the one that creates the most visceral anger when people figure it out. Marcus makes $95,000 a year as a senior analyst. That's W-2 income. After federal, state, FICA, he's taking home around $67,000. His effective tax rate is about 29%. He works hard for that money and the government takes almost a third. Devon's rental income is different. Of that $5,400 in positive cash flow, he gets to depreciate the building. The IRS lets him write off $6,800 a year in depreciation even though the property is actually gaining value. So on paper, Devon shows a $1,400 loss. He pays zero tax on the $5,400 cash flow. Zero. Then the appreciation doesn't get taxed until the mortgage paydown, not income. The refinance cash out, not taxed. Devon is building wealth in a structure that is fundamentally taxed differently than Marcus's salary. And here's the part that makes people angry. This is completely legal. It's not a loophole. It's the actual design of the tax code. The tax code is written to incentivize certain behaviors: investment, business ownership, real estate development. If you only earn W-2 income, you're playing the game in the highest tax lane available. The silent rule is, wealthy people structure around this. Silent rule number 4. Rich people own assets. Everyone else owns liabilities they think are assets. And the confusion between these two is where most wealth goes to die. Marcus bought a new car 2 years ago. $38,000. He put $8,000 down and financed the rest at 6.2%. His payment is $587 a month. That car is now worth about $26,000. He's lost $12,000 in value and paid $4,100 in interest so far. Total damage, $16,100. That's $16,100 that evaporated. It didn't build equity. It didn't generate cash flow. It didn't appreciate. It gave him transportation, sure, but at a wealth cost of $16,100 over 2 years. Devon drives a 2016 Honda Accord he bought for $13,000 cash. It's worth about $11,500 now. He's lost $1,500 in depreciation. Transportation cost over the same period, $1,500 versus Marcus's $16,100. That's a $14,600 difference. But it's not just the money. It's what the money could have done. That $14,600, invested in an index fund averaging 10% annually, compounds to over $96,000 in 20 years. Marcus thought he was buying an asset. He was actually buying a liability with a monthly payment. Devon understood the difference. The silent rule. Every dollar you spend on something that depreciates is a dollar that can't be spent on something that appreciates. Silent rule number 5. Wealthy people buy access, not things. And this one is subtle enough that most people never even see it happening. Marcus goes to the gym. $45 a month. Works out alone. Watches YouTube form videos. He's getting fitter, which is great. Devon joined a CrossFit gym in the business district. $220 a month. Sounds excessive, right? Except in the first 6 months, Devon met a commercial insurance broker, a small business attorney, and a guy who runs a property management company. The property manager now handles all 3 of Devon's rentals for 8% of rent, which is below market because they're friends. The attorney structured Devon's LLC for a flat $800 instead of his usual $2,000 rate. The insurance broker saved him $1,400 a year on his landlord policies. Devon's expensive gym has generated over $6,000 in value in year 1, not counting the relationships that will pay for decades. Marcus saved $175 a month on the cheaper gym. Devon invested $175 a month in access to people who accelerate wealth. Same dollars, completely different framework. The silent rule: wealthy people are never optimizing for the lowest price. They're optimizing for the highest proximity to other people who can expand what's possible. Silent rule number 6. Rich people pay for information. Everyone else expects it for free and then wonders why it doesn't work. Marcus watches YouTube videos and listens to podcasts. Free information. He's learned a lot. He could pass a personal finance quiz. But he hasn't changed his tax structure, bought an asset, or shifted his strategy because free information is almost always general information. And general information protects the person giving it from being wrong more than it helps the person receiving it actually move. It's designed to apply to everyone, which means it's precise for no one. Devon paid $1,800 for a weekend real estate investing course 3 years ago. Felt expensive. Felt risky. In that course, he met a mentor who walked him through his first deal, introduced him to a lender who does portfolio loans, and showed him the specific markets where the numbers actually work. That $1,800 led to 3 properties worth a combined $680,000 with over $140,000 in equity. Marcus has consumed 1,000 hours of free content and deployed $0 differently. The silent rule: information that costs money comes with specificity, accountability, and often access. Free information comes with neither, and you get what you pay for. Silent rule number 7. Wealthy people are patient with growth and impatient with decisions. Poor people are the opposite. Marcus has been thinking about investing in real estate for 2 years. He's researched. He's run numbers. He's listened to podcasts. He hasn't made an offer. He's patient with deciding and impatient for results. Devon saw a property, ran the numbers in a weekend, made an offer Monday, and owned it 30 days later. Then he held it for 3 years without checking the value every month. Fast decision. Slow harvest. The silent rule: speed in execution, patience in outcome. Not the other way around. And that inversion is where most people quietly lose. Now, you might be thinking I'm cherry-picking. Marcus versus Devon. So let's zoom out and talk about the actual pattern across people who built significant wealth. There's a study, The Millionaire Next Door, that's been cited to death, but there's a specific finding most people ignore. The average millionaire in America lives in a house worth less than $320,000 and drives a car that's over 4 years old. These are not the people in Lamborghinis on Instagram. They're people who spent 30 years violating every single look successful norm and following the silent rules instead. Let me give you some real examples because they're almost boring, which is the point. I know a guy who owns a small HVAC business, drives a 2015 F-150, lives in a normal suburban house. Net worth, $4.7 million. He followed the ownership rule. He owns the business, the building it operates from, and the 3 rental properties he bought with the cash flow. Nobody would look at him and guess wealth. That's the camouflage. I know a woman who's a mid-level corporate accountant. Boring job. $78,000 salary. Net worth, $1.9 million at age 52. How? She's been maxing out tax-advantaged accounts since age 24 and house hacking, renting out rooms in her home, for 15 years. Tax structure rule plus ownership rule. She didn't get rich quick. She got rich invisibly. Meanwhile, her coworkers with bigger salaries are still starting over every time they buy a new leased car. Then you've got the counterexamples because I'm not cherry-picking. High income doesn't equal wealth. The NBA has had over 500 players since 1990. 60% of them are broke within 5 years of retirement. These are people who made millions, plural, and they violated every silent rule. They optimized for status over assets. They bought liabilities. They feared boring investments. They listen to broke friends instead of paying for expert information. Or look at lottery winners. 70% of people who win large lottery jackpots are bankrupt within 3 to 5 years. They get the money, but they never learned the operating system. The silent rules aren't about the amount. They're about the pattern. And the pattern is shockingly consistent. Velocity over safety, structure over salary, assets over appearance, access over price, information over free, speed and patience in the right order. So here's the idea I really need you to understand. The thing this whole video is actually about. The advice you hear everywhere is not wrong. It's just incomplete. And incomplete advice executed perfectly still leaves you in the wrong game. Budgeting is not bad. Saving is not stupid. Avoiding credit card debt is smart. But if that's where your financial education ends, you have built a perfect defense and no offense. You're protecting money instead of deploying it. And protection without deployment is just slow loss to inflation and opportunity cost. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. The gap between Marcus and Devon isn't about effort or intelligence. It's about which rules they're playing by. Marcus is following the advice designed to keep broke people from getting broker. Devon is following the patterns designed to move people from stable to wealthy. Both are valid, but they produce completely different outcomes. And the tragedy is that Marcus thinks he's doing the advanced thing because his budget is color-coded. The silent rules are silent for a reason. Not because rich people are hiding them, though some are. Mostly because they don't translate into clickable content. Use a 1031 exchange to defer capital gains while scaling real estate doesn't fit on a motivational Instagram post. Buy liability-reducing assets in tax-advantaged structures doesn't go viral. Budget better, skip the latte does. So that's what gets amplified. And the actual wealth-building mechanics stay quiet, shared in conversations most people never get access to. So let me talk to you, Marcus. Let me talk to everyone who's done everything right according to the loud advice and is still wondering why the gap keeps growing. You are not failing. You are not undisciplined. You are not bad with money. You have been given an instruction manual for a game you're not actually playing. And it's not your fault you didn't know. Here's the permission I want to give you. And it's the same permission I wish someone had given me 10 years earlier. You are allowed to break the rules you think are mandatory. You are allowed to take on good debt while the gurus scream about being debt-free. You are allowed to have $10,000 in your emergency fund instead of $40,000 if the other $30,000 is making you 15% in an asset. You are allowed to pay for education, for access, for expertise, even when free alternatives exist. You are allowed to look less successful than you are. You're allowed to drive the boring car and live in the medium house while your net worth does things your neighbors can't see. The silent rules are not about being flashy. They're about being intentional. And intentionality requires you to stop outsourcing your strategy to people who have never built what you're trying to build. Now, the loudest voices will say, "But that's risky. What if the market crashes? What if the property doesn't rent? What if you lose money?" And those are fair questions. But notice they never ask the opposite. What if you play it safe for 40 years and lose to inflation, taxes, and opportunity cost? What if the risky path is actually safer because it's the only one that compounds faster than your expenses grow? Risk is not just what you do. Risk is also what you don't do. And honestly, learning how to actually execute these rules, not just understand them, that's the thing people ask me about most. How do I actually find the right property? How do I structure the LLC? What does good debt actually look like in my situation? That's a lot of what we build inside the Fininvest Logic community. Real breakdowns, real numbers, real people applying this instead of just nodding along. If that sounds useful, links in the description. So where does that leave us? The silent rules are not secret. They're just quiet. And they're quiet because they don't make good content for people selling you courses on hustle and motivation. They're boring. They're structural. They require you to think in decades, not quarters. They reward patience and punish performance theater. And that makes them very, very powerful for the people who actually follow them. As for Marcus, he's fine, by the way. He didn't blow up his life. He's just starting to realize that his savings account, while safe, is not a wealth-building tool. It's a wealth storage tool. And storage doesn't compound. He's looking at his first rental property now. Running the numbers. Talking to lenders. It's uncomfortable because it violates everything he was told. But he's starting to see that the gap between him and Devon was never about discipline. It was about deployment. And deployment is a skill you can learn if you're willing to follow the rules nobody's shouting about. Here's the last thing, and then I'll let you go. Wealth is not built by following the advice that makes you feel responsible. It's built by following the patterns that make you consistently more capable of deploying capital into things that compound. Those two are related, but they are not the same thing. And confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes in all of personal finance. The loud rules keep you safe. The silent rules make you wealthy. Pick which game you're actually playing and then follow the right manual. If this helped you see the board differently, the community links down below. I'm Ansh, this is Fininvest Logic, and I'll see you in the next one.